tired of ads crashing your comedy podcast party? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
Here's a summer travel tip. Pack just one pair of shoes that goes with every outfit, like the versatile, perfectly packable tree shoes from Allbirds. From the go-anywhere tree runners, to the sporty tree dashers too, to the classic low-top tree pipers, Allbirds has a pair of shoes for every style. The best part is, they're all crafted with lightweight, breathable eucalyptus fiber that takes comfy to the next level. Step into summer travel with the perfect travel shoes from Allbirds. Find your pair at allbirds.com. That's ALLBIRDS.com.
Recording. Hello and welcome to this. It is the EggChasers Rugby Podcast, the podcast about rugby that doesn't take itself or the game too seriously. I'm JB, sat here on my own because, much like Owen Farrell, the other two lads have been banned from the studio. Tim, shipping container down in Exmouth, how are you?
Very well. I had a little stroll around Exmouth Rugby Club earlier.
No.
And I'm I haven't seen any Exeter Chiefs wrestling on the beach yet, but I'm hoping they're going to come and take me on one of these days.
Excellent. Now, Exmouth Rugby Club, this sounds silly. Did Exeter used to play there? Does it have a track around it or something?
There is a track around it. I didn't know Exeter played there at one point. All I will say is I'm staying right on the water, and I can see the posts of the first team pitch from the little what's it called? Like a deck. The deck that's just over the estuary. I can see the rugby pitch there. So it's a lovely spot. It's a cracking little club.
Yeah, so the only reason I ask that is I know Exmouth have a track around that. I don't know how I know that. And I also know that when Exeter used to play back in the amateur days, they had to walk over a track to play. Whether it's the same thing, I do not know.
Oh, no, that was the county ground before before Sandy Park. The county ground had a little, mud track. I think they used it for maybe dogs or, I don't know what it was used for. Anyway,
yeah,
but
because
there was the county ground.
Interestingly,
Notoriously muddy.
When we're talking about dogs and rugby, Connacht's ground, I believe, is owned by the National Whippet Association of Ireland, which is why they struggled to get it developed for so long.
Right, JB is like the best rugby filibusterer in the world ever.
Shall we bring in Phil, because he's more interesting than both of us? Hello, Phil.
Hello, gentlemen. I was quite enjoying listening to that.
Yeah,
I didn't say it wasn't interesting, but JB's unbelievable ability to just take stuff off on random tangents. I thoroughly enjoy it. I'm hoping for more.
Well, this is why Phil is one of my few friends, because he actually enjoys stuff like that.
Well, I did enjoy it. Although I do often say, that's interesting, JB.
Yes, you do, don't you? There's always a red flag, that. Always want to catch myself.
Yeah.
So how did you two enjoy this weekend's rugby?
Well, it depends which game you're talking about.
Talk H versus Trafford Metromix is one I was specifically referring to.
Well, let's talk about that later. But hold on, JB. What are you talking about? You're done with Didsbury Talk H, aren't you? You've retired.
I'm not done with Didsbury Talk H. I might be done with competitive rugby, but I'm not done with Didsbury Talk H.
Okay, so you went along to watch?
No, I played, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh, what? JB?
Yeah.
Okay, we definitely need to talk about that later. JB has come out of retirement before he's even
retired.
Been able to retire.
Not missed a single match yet.
We're going to find out about that later, but no, it depends what game you watched. I thoroughly, and whatever the opposite of enjoying. What's the opposite of enjoying?
Oof.
I don't know.
I
suffered through England v Wales and then thoroughly enjoyed France-Scotland.
God, France-Scotland was good, wasn't it?
The yin and yang of rugby right there.
I loved France-Scotland.
Do you know?
I thought both those games were absolutely excellent.
So, do you know, I'm tempted to start with France-Scotland because it's just so much more interesting. But I do think most of our audience are probably English or Welsh-based. Shall we do those first?
Well, I've certainly noticed this from, doing a bit of YouTube. Misery loves company. The views when England lose are way bigger than when they win.
Yes. Yes, quite. Maybe it's because of all the Sweeney out momentum that we're building through this podcast.
Well, I think on the back of that, Tim, you're going to have a very profitable World Cup.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Tim. England might lose, but you will win.
I don't know.
Look at that, feathering his own nest. The two-way bet.
I really want England to do well at the World Cup. I really do. Well, as much as anything, we all care about rugby, and you've already mentioned Didsbury Toc H. I've been taking my son along all through pre-season training at Broughton Park. Phil, I'm sure if Thomas shows any inkling of interest in rugby, you'll be taking him straight down to your local club and kitting him out, and Hannah as well too, if that's the case. But rugby's in a dire place. That's the context we're in right now going into this World Cup. Rugby's in a dire place financially, in terms of participation numbers, in terms of the kind of existential threat to what rugby is and the fabric of the game. And so what we need desperately is a really good England international team. And what's being served up at the minute is only pouring fuel on top of a bonfire of rugby that I desperately need put out and resurrected soon. I'm mixing up all my analogies here, but you get the point.
Well, let's do the week chronologically, because when this team was announced, it was the first time I've been super excited for an England team in a long time. I thought this was the most dynamite selection maybe in the last 2 or 3 years. That team looked phenomenal on paper.
I agree. For me, maybe there's a toss-up between Marler and Genge.
Yep.
But I'd take Marler for the more stable scrummaging with Genge as off the bench. And maybe the back row misses Curry. But other than that, I was delighted with the team. I was absolutely delighted to see Lawrence and Marchant in the centres. Delighted to see Daly back. Delighted to see Arundel in there. Delighted to see Van Portfleet ahead of either of the two older scrum halves. I was like, this is a strong England team.
Yeah.
This is the kind of, with a couple of names that you might throw in there, but this could be the starting team for the World Cup. And it's against let's just call it a weaker Welsh team.
A rotated Welsh team.
On paper, yeah. Neither of these Welsh teams have been first choice for a number of reasons, but it was a considerably stronger England team than it was a Welsh team. So as an Englishman, with that in mind, going to Twickenham, I was excited, even putting last week's pretty dire performance out of my mind. Yeah,
just to expand on that, I think there could have been stronger England teams put out, potentially. You mentioned Curry, you mentioned Marler, completely agree with that. I thought the selection in terms of excitement, I was waxing lyrical about Ben Earl last week, probably a little bit more than you two. And I'm not saying he's better than Tom Curry in any way. He is more exciting. And same with Genge. Genge is more exciting than Marler, even though Marler's probably a more rounded player. It was the excitement of the selection that got me.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm glad something was exciting. That's good.
Yeah. Well, it's the pre-match. There was some excitement pre-match.
What happened? Yeah, well, yeah, quite. The team selection, and that's about it. As for the Welsh team, it was a Welsh team, right? It was just a Welsh team.
Yeah, it had some class operators in there, Liam Williams and Josh Adams.
Oh my word! I tell you what, Wales, if they have got a conundrum now, it is their two veteran fullbacks are outstanding.
Yeah,
great.
Who is? I'd probably go for Liam Williams just because I think he offers a bit more going forward. But they're both ace. They're both brilliant under the high ball. They're both super, super brave and super, super hard. Yeah. It's a nice problem to have.
I'd go Liam Williams because one reason he desires that niggle, doesn't he? He's not afraid to wind people up. What was the penalty that he drew off somebody?
Arundel yellow card.
Just by being an absolute nasty piece of work. I love that.
But there was a turnover as well late on in the game where it was Maro Itoje. It was a pop pass from Ben Youngs to Maro Itoje. It was the wrong call from Ben Youngs to give it because Itoje was totally isolated. Itoje goes in isolated, gets turned over by Liam Williams, and Liam Williams, as he's on the floor, is kind of mouthing off. And he's the one who's won the penalty, and he's mouthing off, winding up the people who failed to get there. He's such a niggly player.
So you had some nailed-on starters, but you had some lads who I've barely heard of.
Yeah, well, Tom Rogers, no idea. Joe Roberts, no idea. Just no idea. I mean, even on the various rugby apps which one can use, they don't even have a profile picture.
Yeah, it is a much weaker squad.
I mean, I don't know.
Go back to the Six Nations, and we thought, oh dear. And even Warren Gatland said, had he known that the situation in Wales was as it was, he probably wouldn't have taken the job. Nevertheless, with a little bit of time, what Warren Gatland has managed to achieve, and you've mentioned this many times, JB, Warren Gatland's mantra: be the best at the things that require no effort. So the fitness is on point, the attitude is there, and other than the line out, which was absolutely shambolic and cost them the game probably ultimately. Other than that, where Adam Beard towards the end was having to they got a free kick against him because he was having to explain how to do the line out move. So aside from that, Warren Gatland has just done Warren Gatland things and got those foundations, whereas England don't appear to be progressing, and that's the most concerning part. Like you say, we thought, okay, now we've got a team full of experienced guys, and you can say that I actually thought there were some elements of the England kick-it game that were decent, particularly in that first half, the variety of it, bringing Elliot Daly in with his left foot, Owen Farrell with the grubbers, the spiral bombs. I actually quite liked it, but other than that...
Can I just mention on the England kicking game, there were elements of it which were successful. I think that this story about the England kicking game was pre-planned, and comms fell for it big time. So they did a load of highlights of Owen Farrell's kicking. Now, it wasn't bad. Well, was it bad kicking? You tell me what you think. This is verbatim what analysis said on comms. These are great kicks, and on another day, Liam Williams wouldn't have been there. But he wasn't he? And that is the whole point of kicking, which is you kick to space. If you kick to where Liam Williams is, it's not a good kick. There's no point in saying it would have been a good kick had the opposition not been there, because that's utter nonsense. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These kicks on another day would have been very dangerous. Yes. So would the intercepted pass, which you carry on throwing. What is this?
Phil was a winger in his day, so you're really well placed to talk about this, from having to defend and make those decisions between stepping up to defend the ball going wide and staying back for the kick and stuff. But that's basically... Rugby's really simple, and the kick is effective when you offer a genuine threat somewhere else. And we saw this with Scotland and with France. When you get those wingers into indecision because they don't know what you're going to do, are you going to chuck a missed pass in? Are you going to do a deceptive move and get the ball to the wide channel? Then suddenly the wingers step up and the kick becomes an option. England just don't offer the other threat, so they just make themselves so predictable. Phil, is that that's a really basic forward playing summary of things, but is there anything in that?
I've seen you play 10, Tim. You can dabble. No, I would agree with that. And I would say that there were some good kicks. Like there were two grubbers from Owen Farrell, which probably JB that observation, or that comment in comms, could be applied to the grubbers, because they are the one through for Henry Arundel on the right hand side, and there was one through for Elliot Daly on the left hand side. A slightly different bounce of those, and that could have been a try. But JB, I completely agree with your analysis on some of the other stuff. Like, for example, the Owen Farrell kick that led to the Arundel yellow card. Now, I'm not blaming the Arundel yellow card on Owen Farrell.
No, go on, do it.
Some people would, but that was just a poor, dull kick. It was too deep. It was easy for too high, too deep. Easy for Liam Williams to get under and mark it. And it was just, there was, as you say, Tim, there was no other threat. That he'd kind of run out of options. Therefore, he had to kick. And that made it easy for Wales to deal with, and that one was executed poorly.
Yeah.
I mean, one other good kick would be, I think it was a free kick from, I want to say a line out, but it was a free kick where he put up the spiral bomb, which Josh Adams, who is a very experienced international winger, made him look like a fool.
I thought Liam Williams dropped that one.
I thought it was Josh Adams in the first half.
Yeah.
15 minutes. I thought it was Josh Adams. But anyway, whoever was under it, it was an absolute nightmare to deal with. But those grubbers, which could have been effective, and that spiral bomb, they're the kind of things that kind of get the back three or put them under pressure or get them guessing, and they weren't particularly effective. And JB, just on your that kind of how did you phrase it? That was the narrative in comms on the kick-in, the excellent kick-in.
Well, they'd already done, the media had already done a feature this week on George Ford's spiral bombs. So it was obviously going to come up.
Well, that was, I was going to say, that was the O2 inside line.
Yeah.
There was about 5 minutes on George Ford talking you through the basics of how to spiral bomb, which even I found like a little bit dull.
I quite like that. I tell you what I did like about the O2 inside line thing. I would just want to expand on the kicking thing as well. This sounds so nerdy, but I get so excited, not when they're talking, but when you watch them doing their drills and you realise how good these lads are. Because if you've done those drills, just the basic hands drills or just basic unopposed drills, and you see them moving and the fluidity of the moving and the speed of the pass, I love watching them training more than I love watching them playing sometimes, because you realise how good they are.
You love watching England play at the moment.
Well,
you've never been so excited for rugby.
Full time on Saturday, I loved it. I'm not going to lie.
You were ready to check out and not bother. You were considering not doing the podcast. You were so out of love with rugby, and England's demise just resurrected your.
I'm going to be sending Owen Farrell a bouquet of flowers after this weekend.
I've genuinely not seen you so excited on WhatsApp since Leinster lost the final this year.
I mean, that was glorious. I mean, that's 1A and 1B, isn't it? But just
when Leinster lost the previous year, and then when Bristol lost to Quins, and all of those.
Bristol losing to Quins was wonderful.
Fills your heart with joy.
Doesn't it just? So, let me just go back to the kicking, because something happened last week, which we missed. We didn't talk about it, and it happened this week as well, and I think it's really, really interesting. It's more of a general rugby comment and how you play the game rather than specific to this game. But did you notice last week, Wales setting up for a box kick, and then whizzing it out to the fly half, who then kicks to the opposite side of the field? Do you notice that?
I didn't, but I didn't in the game, but I noticed Charlie Morgan observe it this week.
Yes. So after we finished the podcast, Morgan put that up. I was like, bloody hell, that's brilliant. And the reason I'm so enthused about it is because of all of these boring people, like these boring reactionary people. You say, oh, we must ban this, or this must be stopped, or we must change the laws. And actually, the laws are so dynamic, and coaches are so good at manipulating them, that the box kick has now gone, in my mind, from something which is, it can sometimes be very boring, but I love the contested kick. I love the fact that opposition coaches have now got escorting forwards to get rid of that kick. But then I also love the counter to that, which is, OK, well, if you're going to get your escorting forwards to stop the contestable kick, we're going to dummy that kick past the fly half and then put it to the other side of the pitch where there are no escorting forwards, and, hey, presto, Joe Cock-and-a-Singer will not go to a World Cup. That is wonderful. That is absolutely how rugby should develop, not through committees and not through people just trying to ban something to get the outcome that they want. More offloading, more tries. Let the game develop itself.
I thought that was a good observation from Charlie Morgan. And the point that he made was, when England think there's a box kick, they'll put their winger on that side if it's down, Wales's left side, their right winger, plus Freddie Stewart will both sit in that pocket ready for the box kick.
Yeah.
And that's when they're susceptible, because Freddie Stewart is so far over one way. So it will stretch England a bit more. Now that just puts it probably, if England have observed that as well, it probably just means, well, you're more likely to start with Watson and Daly on the wings because they're both kind of international fullbacks in their own right.
If you look back at the games, it also happened a lot. The All Blacks versus South Africa, and they did it over Mpimpi, who again is a world-class winger. And I think the important part about this is you're getting from banning the box kick to now a situation where the box kick is so threatening that additional threat of kicking to the other side of the field via the fly half, I mean, the escorting forwards will disappear because you've got to do something else with them. And now the game becomes really, really open. And
again, it goes back to the point of having multiple genuine threats. And
just let the game evolve. They'll work it out.
And to that point, because England, the way they're attacking seems so predictable and robotic. And actually, when do you remember a time when that wasn't the case? In the last 10 minutes of this match, when they had to score, even though they had 3 men down at one point. They had to go and score because they were points down on the scoreboard. When else? In the autumn against New Zealand when they were 18 points down, and they had to just rip up Steve Borthwick's script and do something different. And I think that's basically tells you absolutely everything. The times when England look threatening is when they have no choice but to abandon the pre-planned script that Steve Borthwick has written for them. And I'm not even blaming Steve Borthwick for this because this was obvious. We talked about this before. This is exactly what he was always going to do. There's no surprise. This is the right man at the wrong time. I think he can pull it together for the World Cup, but over this shorter time horizon, Steve Borthwick's going to have to rip up his own script because it's not going to work.
So I think you raised two separate points there. I think the first point is how England play, and I think we should definitely dive into that a bit more. But the second point about how the England players responded later, I think speaks more to their attitude. I think England's attitude sucks. I mean, I really think they are an arrogant bunch. And nothing more proved that than that last 10 minutes. Well, no, the first 17 minutes combined with that last 10 minutes. But why don't you talk...
I see. What I'm contending is that it was attitude, but not in a kind of arrogance versus humility, but in a on script, off script, robotic versus off the cuff.
Well, yeah,
because when you're 18 points down against New Zealand, you're like, well, all right, we're not box kicking. We need to score tries.
Well,
and again against Wales, it's like we haven't got time's running out with 3 men down. We can't do what we were planning to do. We've got to score tries, and they suddenly look threatening. I think that's a more logical explanation for what happened than the arrogance.
Well, I have to
explain what you mean.
Well, let's just go to how England play and how we're coached. I have no doubt. I am 100% positive on this point that if I just assembled those players, right, and I told them to show up to a meeting room so I could explain to them how to play, and I didn't show up, they would have played better than how they played on the weekend. Like it's like paralysis by analysis, almost. So I kind of do agree with you. Like they've clearly not mastered what Steve Borthwick wants them to do, or Steve Borthwick has not communicated it well enough. Something is fundamentally wrong with how they play. But I'm not sure it's the structure because, like, can you hear that? What was that?
Motorbike going by? Someone?
I think it was a motorbike going down my street.
Oh right, okay, fine.
Phil's on the Isle of Man with the TT going on.
I mean, I'm not sure it's so much, but there again, I'm not sure it's so much the style of England's attack, but more how the players are executing it. So, I don't see anyone in World Rugby doing anything much different to how England play with their 3 forwards. But I don't see anyone else doing anything. Yeah, I just don't see anyone else doing anything differently. I just don't think England executes it very well as players.
I think the execution in the last 2 weeks has been absolutely diabolical. And Steve Borthwick in his post-match press conference said he would probably say he's not trying to give excuses, but I took it as an excuse. He said the players have just had the hardest week of training that they've ever had, and that was one of the reasons why there were so many drop balls and lost in turnovers. But that's the same as last week.
But what do you think Wales have been doing?
Say again, sorry?
What do they think Wales have been doing?
I know,
on the beach?
Yeah.
Or Scotland or France?
Yeah.
Precisely, yeah. That for me is not an adequate reason at all. But I do think there's something in both of those points. JB, I do agree. Like when I listen to the O2 Inside Line, which I love, there's so much talk around like we're building something special and we're part of something special, and like I just feel like that they're telling themselves that they're more than they are. Now that's just like 5-second clips in a few minutes of video that's been heavily curated, but I get the impression that they think they're better than they actually are.
I completely agree.
They've not earned the right to feel like that.
I think they've forgotten what it is to earn a position. And the reason I say this is I'm just looking at this Wales squad. Now, if someone wants to talk about the unwritten story, it has to be these Welsh boys. We've not seen a first Welsh team yet. A Welsh first team yet. We've seen 2 mixtures of players, and they are playing for their lives. They are nowhere near as good on paper as England. Like, the achievements of the regions have been diabolical of late, so they're not building their confidence from that. And if you listen to what Warren Gatland says, he's like, well, if I played tomorrow, I probably know 3 guys who would get onto my team sheet. And he's not picked his squad either. So last week for England was like, I didn't really appreciate it at the time, but after the England squad was announced, I did. It was like a goodbye and a thank you for training, which just isn't what you do. It's just, I think Borthwick can be blamed for this solely, that you don't treat your international games as a thank you for anybody ever. Warren Gatland has treated his like, this is, if you're playing, you could go to the World Cup. Like Johnny Hill knows he's not going to the World Cup. And conversely, those players who played on the weekend know more or less that they are going to the World Cup. And it shows, and I'm so bored of watching Owen Farrell. I said who else does it? Ellis Genge and quite a few others with the little cry faces when they've been yellow carded. Some of these players look like they just think the game should happen for them because they are who they are, and they've forgotten what it is to win a spot. And when they have to, they can do it. So that last 10 minutes, you think, yeah, okay, there is something here. So maybe they can turn that on in the World Cup. And I hope for all the England fans that they can. But other than that, I think their attitude absolutely sucks.
Well, the other point I wanted to make was that last 10 minutes. And I think Cocker, you are absolutely spot on. And I went back and watched, because it reminded me so much, that last 10 minutes, of the England-New Zealand game from last year. And I went back and watched that game. And England were crap for 70 minutes. And then it was over. They had 10 minutes to score 20-odd points. And they just played with a total freedom that they hadn't done at all. And it's the same as this, that last 10 minutes when they're three men down, and after when they got the other men back, and even when Adam Beard went off, they actually played with a freedom because they had to score some points. And they kind of ripped up the Borthwick prescribed rule book, and that was them playing their best rugby. Now, whether you can do that for 80 minutes, whether you can do it for longer than 10 minutes when you're already tries down, 1 or 2 scores down, but there is definitely something in that.
If we're seeing that, and again, correlation may equal causation. It may not be exactly how it is on the park. But if we're seeing that, I wouldn't mind betting that in quiet conversations, England players are saying it. It's very reminiscent of Gregor Townsend and Finn Russell friction.
Unless...
from a couple of years ago.
Unless, and I suspect there is an element of this too, that the reputations of those players and the England hierarchy is so set in stone that no one questions it. Like, Owen will come good, Genji will come good. These are the best guys that we've got. No one questions it. Because... let me just pose this question to you, this hypothetical. Do you think England would have played better the last 2 games if, when the coach changed from Eddie Jones to Steve Borthwick, he didn't announce a captain, and he said things like Warren Gatland has said, which is, if I play tomorrow, there's only 3 names that I'd pick. I have no idea. In fact, these guys are rubbish. In fact, if I knew how bad this was, I wouldn't have taken this job. I mean, imagine just ripping up the script completely for them, saying, right, it's completely up to you to prove to me that you deserve to be here. I bet this group of players would be absolutely dynamite now. But instead, they look complacent.
I think my gut feeling response to that is, and I know the point you're making, and there could well be something in it, but you actually put in our group chat earlier the phrase paralysis by analysis. And I think that is more at the root of this. I think these players are diligently doing what their coach has told them to do. I think they are buying into their coaches. I think they believe in their coach. They're diligently being professionals, seeing that the route to success is doing what their coach has prescribed and trying to do it all together. Yeah. And I just think that style of rugby is maybe 10 years old now. And it worked for Leicester Tigers. Could it work for England? Potentially, yes.
But what
most
is
likely, no.
Asking them to do fundamentally? He's asking them to kick chase hard.
Yeah.
Kick the ball a lot. He's asking them to
make the opposition make errors.
Yeah.
Kick penalty goals and score. Get penalties. Force penalties with turnovers. Don't use those turnovers to go wide, but use them to kick for the corner and play driving mauls.
I mean, you could forgive him, couldn't you, if he was asking them to play, Harlem Globetrotters mixed with the Sexton Loop and the requirement to have the skills of Carlos Spencer. You could forgive them for getting that wrong, but I can't forgive them for getting this wrong, because you need to kick chase hard and you need to execute your line out. So that is like the bare minimum. Now, to only be 6 points up against a team like Wales, who was just cobbled together recently with a couple of guys who don't even have a profile picture and who lost 4 of their own lineouts before half-time. My word, that is dreadful. My word.
Just on that tactic as well. There was Borthwick used some terminology in the post-match press conference about describing Wales as, like Argentina, they're the kind of team who will be very difficult to beat and will be in any game, therefore can win any game. And the point he was making was, this is a good test for playing Argentina in the first game of the World Cup, which is the most important game in the World Cup group stages, because it's the most difficult team in their group. But I actually think it reveals something of Borthwick's plan for England, because I think he's trying to make England more like, not necessarily Wales or Argentina, but actually more like South Africa, the last winners of the World Cup. Now, part of that might be because of the chip on the shoulder that England still have from getting hammered in the final. But that South Africa team wasn't the kind of thing. They did it against Canada or Italy or Namibia, I think it was, in the group stages. But they weren't the kind of team who were going to blast anyone by 20, 30 points, apart from England in the final. They were the kind of team who would be in it in any game, but could win or lose any game. And they actually lost to New Zealand in the group stages, and they only managed to beat that nuggety Wales team by 3 points in the semi-finals. So I think there's some insight into what Borthwick is trying to do. Whether that is the right approach, time will tell.
Yeah, he's trying to do something with them. I mean, look, if they play like they did for the first 70 against Argentina, they'll get absolutely spanked. If they play like they did in the last 10, they will blow Argentina away fairly comfortably, I would suggest.
I tend to agree. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and I agree. And this is the conundrum, and this is the rub, because that would require Steve Borthwick to rip up his own script.
Mm-hmm.
Well, would it not just require the players to try harder? I mean, that's what I think. It would just require them to try harder. There's just an attitude. Like, Mario Itoje was completely anonymous. There were 2 good players, I think, for England in the first 70. Courtney was demolishing lineouts, but that also could be because, Adam Beard had to explain it to most of the other players.
Yeah.
So, swings and roundabouts.
Courtney's lineout was great.
Yeah.
But
his opposition were not. Ben Earl did all right. I mean, didn't do great. He did all right.
I thought the individual performances, take the whole game. Ben Earl, I thought, played well. I think he was a menace at the breakdown, and he was one of the few forwards that gave good go forward. I thought Elliot Daly had a couple of lovely runs, some nice kicks on the boot, and looked solid throughout. And I thought Marchant, when he got a couple of half chances, he looked good.
Marchant was class, but he's always class.
But it was only a couple of half. I want to see more of these guys. Yeah. I want to see more of Marchant. I want to see more. I think one of the learning things from this is, had Borthwick not already announced his squad, I don't think Billy would be in his squad.
No.
I think we would be seeing a back row of Ludlam, Curry, and Ben Earl.
You need more energy. That's what England lacked, isn't it? Energy. Where was the energy?
Laws, Curry, Earl, or Laws, Willis, Curry. You've got to have those more dynamic guys. Yeah,
or guys that are wanting to prove themselves. These guys don't want to prove themselves. I'm sure of it. I am sure.
We will have broken a record compared to any other conversation on this game, not mentioning Owen Farrell's red card, because apparently that is the only story to take out of this game.
I'm humouring you, Tim. I am just giving. Look. This podcast is about more than me. It's partly about you, Tim. So I'm going to let you have your fun, and then when we get to Owen Farrell, I'll have my fun.
Well, shall we just work our way into Faz by talking about, because there was 5 other cards in this game. And I think it's interesting that the two Welsh yellow cards were for the same reason at the breakdown.
Yep.
I thought Rafael was hard done by. I thought Beard was correct.
Yep.
The 4 England cards were all entirely different. There was no correlation between them.
Well, I think the correlation was discipline.
That goes without saying for all cards.
Well, no, because you can get an accidental card, can't you? Like, you can slip into a high tackle, or you can be getting pumped at the scrum. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, there are certain things where you get issued with a card and think, I wasn't stupid, I was just really unlucky, and that's what the high tackle framework says, or there are things happen.
I think that's so. I think Genge was unlucky. I'm not a prop, but Genge felt unlucky. He'd only been on the pitch 2 minutes. I wasn't aware that there was a previous warning, and he got done for hinging an immediate yellow card.
Off you go.
That felt unlucky rather than discipline.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the steward one, it's not really discipline. It's just
the steward one was amazing. The steward one was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Between him and Owen Farrell, they are.
I thought Steward's one was worse than Farrell's personally.
Steward and Farrell are in a running gunfight to see who can get the most stupid card and have the most stupid passage of play, and I love it. I'm all for it. So, what I loved about the steward one, right, is his eyes weren't on the ball. He was looking at the player he was about to tackle. He tackles a player, realises that he's in trouble, but then he almost stops playing. And if it wasn't for like a last-minute intervention by him, like last minute, oh Christ, I need to carry on playing this game, Liam Williams would have scored, which is the most amazing worst of both worlds there, which is give away the yellow card, potentially put yourself at risk at a penalty try, but let Liam Williams score anyway just to guarantee it.
Well, Marchant was actually guilty of that. I think it was Marchant. Marchant did actually stop playing when Williams picked the ball up. He was the next man to the
was it Marchant who just stayed? As one of it, I just remember in my mind someone just stayed still. Yeah,
I'm pretty certain it was Marchant. Just basically stopped playing.
What a disaster that was! I mean, that was awesome.
But yeah, it was the different variety. I thought the Arundel one was stupid. But the Farrell one. Let's get into the Farrell one finally.
So I'll lead off because I'll let Tim have the last word because we know he's a Farrell fan, so it's only fair. But in my mind, look, Owen Farrell does some adequate things with he is the man for the pressure situation with the ball in hand. I can't argue with his tactical kicking or his place kicking or his distribution. Really, I think they're all adequate. I'm not sure he's world class, but they're adequate to good. They're serviceable on the world stage. That's what I'd say. But when it comes to defence and when it comes to high pressure situations, he loses it completely. And this is such a problem. He can tackle. We know he can tackle. But sometimes when he's trying that little bit extra too hard, England were down to 12 men at the time. This is him now.
No, 13 men.
Sorry, he was a 12th man, right? 13 men. And here he is. He's trying to do the whole leadership thing. That's what he's trying to put in the big hit, turn the game. He's not capable of it. This is a huge mental frailty that he has. I've said this for the longest time. It's Saracens, his biggest ally, stopped him getting into trouble, was Brad Barrett. Because Brad Barrett took so much defensive load off him. He didn't need to be that defensive fulcrum. But sometimes he feels that he has to be. And when he's played at 12 for England, he has missed a lot of tackles by flying up. People say, it's a defensive system. Yeah, well, Brad Barrett didn't do it. He's had high shots on Charlie Atkinson. He's now done it to Tane Basham.
Four red cards in his career is just the facts.
Well, no, because one of them wasn't a red card, and he still went high on... No,
I've just said 4 red cards in his career.
4 red cards. I mean, that's quite a lot, isn't it? And he's a leader too. So, I just...
Yeah, I suppose it is quite a lot. But it's quite a lot for
a fly-half?
For 14 years for a fly-half, that is quite a lot. It's more than most, but yeah, four red cards in 14 years.
And tackle school.
About 400 games.
And don't forget the one... But these are some of the most high-pressure games that a player can have.
How many international level? How many red cards at international level is it? Was that his first one? Or is it 2 now?
It might be 2, but
in 105 games. Was that his first one or his second one?
I think it's his first one.
I think it might be his first. I think that was his first red card. Yeah, I'm just getting the facts, just making sure we got the facts. I think that was his first red card.
Okay, how many
in 105 caps?
Okay, how many red cards has George Ford had?
I don't know. I was just
how many red cards?
I'm only.
But what are the facts? I mean, what are the comparative facts then? I mean, how many red cards is... I don't know.
It'll be one more. It'll be one more than many fly halves. It'll be equal to others, and it'll be fewer than others.
I reckon, his closest... I'm not joking now. I think the guy closest to Owen Farrell in terms of fly half discipline is Butch James. I mean, that is your closest comparison. And you're forgetting as well.
I'm not denying
hit on Esther Hayes.
One red card in 105 caps. I'm not putting any value judgment on that. I'm just using facts.
Yeah. So the fact is, he's probably the equivalent defensively to Butch James. Now, I mean, Butch James is a mighty fine player, and I liked watching him play. Simply the fact that that's who he was. So I do think that the Owen Farrell time is probably done.
Freddie Stewart's had at least one red card in, about 20 matches. God, he must be really dirty.
What, a fly half?
Freddie Stewart, no, Freddie Stewart plays fullback.
Oh, right, okay. Well, who were the comparative fly halves then? Butch James? Okay. Can you think of any others? Any others?
I don't have a list of fly halves red cards in front of me.
Oh, right, okay. I mean, I'm just trying to think. I mean, surely some of them have been red carded for something, but never so consistently.
Probably more comparable would be inside centres who've had red cards, because Owen Farrell was playing 12 at the time and has played more of his England career with a 12 on his back than a 10 on his back.
Yeah, I guess so. So let's compare Brian Lima, maybe.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Owen Farrell, Brian Lima, Butch James.
Be interesting to know what the comparative facts are. And I'm only talking facts. I'm making, again, no value judgment, just putting facts out there.
Well, I think the value judgment has to be, I think his attitude or his consistent mistake making when the pressure comes on means he's not suitable for captain. I really mean that. And, that last 10 minutes when George Ford really turned England around should be a massive red flag. I mean, I think Borthwick could do very well now just to turn to George Ford and say, look, Owen's not going to be around for 4 weeks because he's careless. It's all yours. And Owen has to earn his way back.
And in the New Zealand game, when England also had to just rip up Borthwick's script and play with a freedom, which we saw in the last 10 minutes yesterday, who was 10 at that time?
Don't know. Owen Farrell? Look, no one's doubting Owen Farrell is good with ball in hand.
No. It was. Or was it? I think was it Farrell or was it Smith and Farrell? I can't remember. The point being, I don't think it matters. That this is okay. We can talk about the red.
It does matter.
It was a red card. Whether it was his first red card at international level, which I believe it was. It may have been his second one. I don't know.
It was his first red card. He had 2 yellow cards as well at international level.
So it's his first red card at international level. That's a fact. It was a red card. It is going to cost him. But I guess beyond that, all I would say on this is the conversation about who wears 10 for England. We did it to death with Marcus Smith for about 18 months before people finally shut up about that after Marcus Smith had 20 England caps and wasn't as good as Owen Farrell. Marcus Smith doesn't play the game that Steve Borthwick wants him to play. So if you want Marcus Smith, you've got to play a different game. I'm not saying I'm not picking one over the other. The only point I'm making here is who wears 10 on their back and the relative merits of each is completely a pointless conversation to have. They're all brilliant. I don't actually care who wears 10. I think Owen Farrell is the best 10 in England for what it's worth. He's going to miss out. I'm perfectly happy that George Ford's going to wear 10. I wouldn't mind if Marcus Smith did. The problems are way bigger than who is wearing 10. No. And honestly, the comments about Owen Farrell in the last 24 hours, I thought we'd left this behind. I honestly did. No, I thought people got what they wanted and saw Marcus Smith. They got what they wanted and saw Marcus Smith, and he didn't do anything. And people sort of had to retreat back into their shell and stop making all these comments about Owen Farrell. And this red card has just brought them all out again. It's so boring.
But it's not, is it? So, I mean, there's so many issues around. First of all, the sort of God complex about Owen Farrell, I think, does hold England back. So even Borthwick, when he first showed up, was like, I do have my captain. It's definitely Owen Farrell. Well, just delay your judgment, right? Just let's see what they do in the shirt first. Second of all, it's because of this continual worship of Owen Farrell. You could point to the fact that not enough centres have got game time. It could be. I mean, that's not Owen Farrell's fault.
Why are you saying worship? Why are you saying worship? Why are you saying things like arrogance? You're loading a load. You're imputing a load of motive. You're putting a load of stuff. You're guessing a load of attitudes and thoughts and feelings about stuff which you don't know to be true. If you just deal in the facts.
Well, then, if you deal in the facts, I mean, we can talk about yardage made or stuff, but it's not going to be much of a podcast, is it? Okay. Is it? Is that what you want to do? Isn't the whole point of rugby the leadership and the passion and how people deal with pressure? Right. I mean, how do you tangibly say how does a guy deal with pressure?
Well, how about you state it as your opinion rather than saying...
Well, what else is it? I'm an opinion maker on a podcast. I'm not a statistician. So, based on that, if you look at things which we've already brought up, like the discipline, well, he's like the cultural leader. If you look at the things like how you play the game and the turgid attack, well, I can't imagine Finn Russell leading this England team in that same style. I can't imagine any team with Finn Russell playing in it. Ultimately, when you're a fly half...
Well, what happened when Marcus Smith played for England? What happened when Marcus Smith was 10 under Steve Borthwick?
He just wasn't good enough.
Eddie Jones.
He just wasn't good enough. I think is what it comes down to. I mean, he was okay.
But he looks pretty awesome for Quins, doesn't he? Owen Farrell looks pretty amazing for Saracens.
They
look great for the Lions.
But, at the very, very highest level, maybe these guys aren't as world-class as you think, Tim. So when you're saying things like, it doesn't matter which fly half we pick, maybe it really does, because maybe both of them are not just as good as we think. So we had an email this week, and this email was something along the lines of, maybe we have overestimated England, because a lot of them play in the Premiership, and a lot of the Premiership games like 34-46.
I totally agree with that.
I think there could be something in that too.
Sorry, we should let Phil in. I think you can. I think that's a great point, and there you go. That's a much bigger point than any individual. You track the quality of the Premiership, and we love the Premiership, and I've worked in the Premiership, and we really enjoy it. But if we stand back and be cold, the quality of the Premiership has dipped, probably since Saracens got relegated,
100%.
and then various issues since.
Yep.
But since that moment, you can directly track the quality of the Premiership, their success in Europe, and England's national team. They're on the lines, the curves are almost identical.
Yeah. But
that's a great point.
But I guess it does go to the point that maybe they're not all excellent. Maybe we perceive them to be excellent because they're playing at, like Saracens are the strongest team in the Premiership. George Ford won a title with Leicester. I mean, I think out of all of them, George Ford has to be the guy to lead them now. I just think that has to be the case.
So in the Premiership, it's an interesting point, and I definitely agree that the quality of the Premiership is falling. When the English Premiership won, was it 4 out of 6 Champions Cups? So Saracens won 3 and Exeter won 1 in 6 years. It was Farrell as the guy steering Saracens at the time. Now, I think Farrell is I think he's an excellent player. I think he's an excellent centre and an excellent 10. And probably up until now, and maybe even still now, if he's fit and available, I would probably have him starting for England. However, there's bigger concerns raised for me with those high tackles, because I've seen him do it before in the league. I've seen him do it and get away with it, like the Andre Esterhuizen hit a few years ago, which could have cost England the game against South Africa, but they ended up winning, which was a marginal call. But I think 9 times out of 10 that now gets given as a red card. But he is also, like JB, you made the point about him being in the pressure cooker and failing. I mean, he's repeatedly succeeded in the pressure cooker.
Yeah,
but he does have this.
I want to be very clear on that pressure cooker thing. There are some situations where he handles it brilliantly, which is why he gets the benefit of the doubt so much. And 95% of the time, it is him with ball in hand and kicking sticks and kicking for corners and doing marvellous things. And people go, yeah, it's great. But those few times where his head just goes, particularly in D, that is a real tangible problem.
I'm not even sure if his head just goes in D. I think it is just a tackle technique failure.
Can you not go to tackle school for that?
Say again.
Can you not just go to tackle school for
that? It depends. What happens when you've already graduated tackle school?
I do not know.
Tackle University.
Tackle University.
He's going to be a PhD in tackling.
Oh, the rich irony.
So, yeah, I think it is just a flaw in his technique. Now, what I do agree with, Tim, is your point that as an England fan, I don't actually think it matters that much whether it's Farrell or Ford. I do think there's a difference, there's a drop-off to Marcus Smith, probably more pertinently because of the way that England are playing, or Borthwick is wanting England to play. If it was England kind of let rip, last 10-minute mentality, then Marcus Smith is probably your guy. But England aren't going to play like that. So I'm comfortable with it being George Ford. And actually, as an England fan and someone who probably thinks Farrell is, and certainly for the longest time has thought Farrell is the first choice 10, I wouldn't actually mind him being out of the tournament now. Because at least then you get some closure and
clarity.
Clarity.
This is where I was going to go next. I think it's a blessing in disguise, because I completely back what I'm saying about the arrogance of the England squad, how they feel like they're ordained to win and they don't need to work too hard until they realise, Christ, we actually do need to work now. Getting rid of the captain, whether he deserves it or not, and giving it over to George Ford and just making them a little bit more uncertain, I think that's going to be a good thing. It can't be a bad thing.
Do you know one of the things I most regret about the red card is that we didn't get 20 minutes of Ford Farrell? Because I'm good for it. I'm absolutely good for it. I think it's been holding England back. This is what I'm saying. I think this. They haven't done it in about 3 years.
Yeah, don't do it again.
Since 2019.
Leave it.
When they got to a World Cup final, won a Grand Slam, Six Nations.
Yeah, just go and get the next guy. Give someone else an opportunity.
I'm not saying I want it as my first choice tactic.
Yeah,
I do. But as I've been saying, I think there may have been some life in it at times in games, and certainly when you look at the.
Just listen to how
the dick fingers some of the backline have when they play. You just wonder whether actually just get two really good rugby players on the field and let them pull the strings and get Arundel, Daly in space. So again, I don't mind if George Ford is the 10 permanently, and Owen Farrell misses all the pool games and it's not worth taking him to the World Cup.
No,
I would feel sorry for him. It would be a shame that his World Cup career with England would end in such a way, but. I wouldn't mind just to go in. People may confuse me as being some kind of Owen Farrell zealot. I'm not. I respect what he has done and what he does do. I just think I think making too big a comment on him in this context is irrelevant. And I could just go back to what I said earlier in the podcast, where it's like England look good when they don't do what Steve Borthwick tells them to do.
Yeah. Well, I would just retort with this. Like every time England, look at the comments around last week's defeat. Well, don't worry, Owen's back next. Not Owen per se, but look at the players that we're bringing back. Well, just to get rid of the leader. So everyone's like, right, well, no one's coming to save you now, boys. You're going to have to actually work really, really hard. I don't think that's a bad thing. And, the fact that they carry on going back to Ford and Farrell when they've got so much talent. I mean, I know you're going to say, who is it? But you'd say the thing about Wales, right? You could say the same thing about Wales. Well, who is
exactly
the talent?
Now you're making my point for me. It's not personnel. It's not personnel.
Well, it is personnel in this case.
You've just made my point. It's not personnel.
No, but
it doesn't matter.
It is personnel in this case because they keep going back to the same personnel and not letting other personnel develop. So I guess
Ollie Lawrence and Joe March at the centres. What are you talking about? Henry Arundel on the wing. Elliot Daly back in the side. Freddie Stewart wasn't there at the last World Cup. Jack Van Portfleet at 9. What are you talking about?
Well, look, these are relatively recent developments. I mean, we have spoken ad nauseum about England's 12 situation. So it's not as if they've had that sorted. And one of the reasons is they just carry on going back to Ford and Farrell and not letting people play and develop. Now they have to, and I think it's a positive thing.
That's the first time Steve Borthwick played any minutes with Ford and Farrell.
Yeah, but this has been going. I mean, this is not a Steve Borthwick thing. To be fair to him, this has been going on for absolutely ages. This has been going on since the start of Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones dabbled with Ford and Farrell at 10, 12. I mean, I think it might have happened before that as well. Actually,
I hated winning Grand Slams and getting to World Cup finals. Really,
yeah, and that's when they were playing like young, hungry, hungry young men, and I didn't see that this weekend. So hand the team over.
So I think we've probably touched on England too much.
Yeah.
Are we not talking about Wales that much other than the skinny squad and the a couple of players? But there's probably more positivity about this Wales team than I perhaps think there should be. Now, I just want to caveat that because I think what you said before, JB, or I think Cocky, you said this as well, about Gatland turning this Wales team, or getting to do the basics incredibly well. The basics in defence and doing it without Sean Edwards, I think is remarkable, because I do think the defence on this Wales team is excellent in both games. I mean, they've stopped England England 1 try in the 2 games, and that was a pushover. But I'm not sure I see enough other stuff. And like we mentioned before about the dreadful, truly dreadful line out. But it took, in this game, it took England being down to 12 men for Wales to do anything with ball in hand. Anything at all. Like the one try came when England were a man down, which was the crossfield kick. The other try came when there were 3 men down, which was the breakout from Kieran Williams.
Yeah.
And the pass back inside. But they really didn't do much else with ball in hand. I thought they were blunt. And that, combined with the phrase Gatland used, was he was furious that they didn't close out this game being against a 12-man team and a team that finished with 14. I think there should be perhaps more negativity about this Welsh team than there has.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's all about relative perspective. So I thought Wales were done. Maybe as a rugby nation. Over the Six Nations, thought, this is it. Pivac had gone. He had basically milked every last bit of life out of the older squad members. Alan Wynne-Jones, Tipuric had left. There's been absolute carnage at the regions. They've brought back Gatland, and it never works when you go back to an ex. Everyone knows that. And I didn't think that there's anything good going to happen. Gatland's Six Nations performance was very poor, very, very poor. And it looked like he had all the excuses in the world lined up for it not to improve. So if you go from that position, which is one of, the worst home nations team, not by a little bit either, but by a lot, then you start to think, bloody hell, a 2-point loss at Twickenham and a win at home against England. So, with England, it's different because I think the hopes for this England team are so much higher. I mean, they are much higher. So I agree with you in the sense that they didn't do much, which really impressed me. But the fact they were still in it, impressed me in of itself, and the fact that the attitude that they've shown, just the unearthing of talent. I think by the time that this team gets to the World Cup, I think 2 teams for me are going to be outstanding in terms of how much they can squeeze out of the talent available to them. From what I've seen, that'll be Scotland, and that'll be this Welsh team. Because I don't know how well they'll do, I don't know how much they'll win, but I guarantee they'll squeeze every ounce of talent out of that squad.
Well,
I think that's fair. And Phil mentioned the South Africa game in the last World Cup, and that's what Warren Gatland teams do. They're always in the fight, and they were again in this one and should have won it. I also see the point Phil's making, because if you watch the first 15 minutes again, and I'm not wanting to flip this round onto England, I'm actually trying to make the point about Wales. I think they should conceivably have been 21 points down after 15 minutes, because there was the kick to the right hand corner from Farrell. Marchant almost scored, very, very close. There was a line out on Wales's line when England just ballsed up the maul and ended up taking 3 points, and then they again in Wales's 22 just a real dick finger knock on, and just didn't convert the dominance, and they could legitimately have been 12, 15, maybe even 21 points up, and Wales rode their luck. But they come up against a team which do finish, and hopefully in a World Cup quarter-final when England, there's a very good chance England, if both teams make it out of their pool, play Wales, then I expect England to be in a better place and take those chances. But then again, Wales are going to be improved as well. So
I will just say that the England desire for pitched battles, which is what they want to do. I think we all agree on that. They want to get into the right parts of the field and then beat you up, which is great, and I'm all for that. I genuinely am. But it does play very well into Wales's hands. I think they would get murdered against the All Blacks. So yeah, I'm basically agreeing with everything you said there, Tim. They would get murdered.
Wales would definitely get murdered against the All Blacks.
Yeah,
I'm after this week. I am worried about Wales getting out of their pool. Honestly,
yeah, I would.
Really, wow,
really, I really am. I really am. Having no line out is a problem. Having a stop-start scrum.
You can fix the line out. I mean, to me, it's not much of a problem not to have a line out in a warm-up game.
And surely, like in terms of organisational line-outs, that's nothing Fiji have been particularly ever known for.
This is true. Although, I do worry's not the right word, I do wonder about the new improved Pacific Island teams. Fiji aren't one of these, but some of the expertise that they're getting back from either Australia or New Zealand, who have like absolutely cutting-edge experience of the highest level, and instituting that into their line-out drills and their scrimmaging drills, they're going to be frightening. They're going to be frightening for the first time. Well, not the first time, but they're going to have that additional edge of all of that knowledge coming back to those squads.
Well, it's also... so Fiji haven't got that same talent coming back from ex-All Blacks or Aussies, but they've got a team. So about half of their squad, or 30% of their squad, comes from the Fiji Drua, who are playing in Super Rugby and got some handy wins, including winning against the Crusaders.
Yeah.
So it's not like that. It's not like these guys are a bunch of first timers and newbies. It's different. Crusaders are a very, very good team, but it is different beating the Crusaders from playing an international team. But I just think the fact that they've got to play Australia, and we should talk about the Australia squad after we've talked about Scotland, France. So they've got to play Australia, who will be very difficult. They've then got two totally different threats, because they play Georgia, who will get that line out and scrum. Like, if you're worried about a weak line out or a potentially weak scrummage, like, you don't want to be playing Georgia.
No, you do not.
And if so, they've got to overcome that threat, and then the totally different threat of Fiji, because Fiji will provide a different threat.
I think Fiji's the one.
Threat.
And I'm not worried about Georgia, but I know what you're saying. I do worry about Fiji, because, you know, if you're struggling in the scrum, but you can still make it a dogfight, okay, fine. But if you're getting absolutely panned by points being leaked everywhere, then that's a problem. And I think you could see a repeat of, is it 2007?
2007. Yeah.
I think we could easily.
I called it a few weeks ago. I said this feels like an 07 reboot, and I'm absolutely hoping I'm right, and we fluke our way to a final.
Well, it could against Georgia feel like 2022, when Georgia beat Wales in their own Principality.
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Yeah.
How do I not remember that? I should remember that.
Yeah.
Less than 12 months ago.
Oh dear.
So we're contact@eggchasers@gmail.com on email, patreon.com/eggchasers for more spicy content. I feel like with all the negativity surrounding both the teams we've been talking about,
I'm very positive on Wales. It's only Phil that's not.
Yeah. But we should talk about.
I'm very positive on Owen Farrell not playing.
Well, unfortunately, I kind of fear that. What I sensed on Saturday evening, just when you have a little scan of social media and stuff, what really concerned me the most, and again in WhatsApp groups, which some of them were very intense, but others that I expected to be busy were desolate places, and I just got a real sense of apathy for rugby, which is all the more of a shame if people gave up on the Amazon rugby coverage during the England-Wales game. They missed an absolute cracker.
Oh, what a belter. France is where it's at, boys. I'm telling you now, France is where it is at. Like, everything about French rugby at the moment is complete and utter showbiz. I love it. Before we go on to this, there's something which a friend of mine pointed out. So we're watching the game, and they pointed out, a non-rugby playing friend, they said, isn't it good that you can hear the refs talk? And I thought, well, okay, that's interesting, because they come from a football background. And then I thought about what the ref said, and I think I've come up with a way to improve the game. So, do you know? So I'll give you an example of what I'm about to say. The referee had a penalty, and I wasn't actually paying attention at the time, but I heard the ref saying that penalty is for coming up around the side. So, coming up around the side, what is your thoughts on what that penalty would be for? I'm sure you'll get it, but still.
Is that on a rolling maul?
Well, I don't know, because I wasn't paying attention. I just heard coming up around the side.
I would assume that's a rolling maul.
Yeah.
The defender kind of loop into the back man, losing their bind,
losing their bind, and yeah.
That's exactly what it was, right? But because I wasn't paying attention, all I heard is coming up around the side. My friend asked me, like, what's that for? I said, well, coming up from the side. So I really had to think about it. So I think there should be standards now, in the same way there's standards for referees communicating with their hand signals, for how they communicate with the crowd. So it's not good enough to say, because referees talk on their mic as if they're talking to the players, when actually I think they need to be communicating to the fans, and particularly the fans that don't necessarily understand the game. The standard language should be, that penalty is for coming up the side round a maul and breaking your bind, or a form of language that as a viewer you can instantly get. And the NFL do this. So the referee gets on the mic and explains the decision with standard language. So
I had a similar thought watching this game. A totally different scenario, but it was Nick Berry as the ref, wasn't it? And Rory Darge got penalised about less than 10 minutes to go in the first half, so after 35 minutes, in his own 22. And the language that Nick Berry used was, "You went too long."
Yes, so that's the other one. Great spot.
He was trying to affect the jackal.
Yeah.
He was trying to jackal the ball. And Nick Berry's language was, "You went too long." And I tended to disagree, both in terms of what I'd seen, but also as it was Johnny Barclay, Tim, your mate, in comms, making the point that, like, Rory Darge has got a very strong lower body and very low centre of gravity. Like, he can go long. The point is not whether he goes long or not. The point is whether he's supporting his body weight.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably clumsy language from Nick Berry, but that should be, whether you're long or not is irrelevant. Are you capable of supporting your body weight in that position? I'm
going to give him the benefit of the doubt. It's not clumsy language. It's very insular language. He's talking to experts in the field. And when you say going long, what we know immediately after 25 years of rugby, well, not even immediately. If I hadn't seen that incident and you said, "What does this mean going long?" I think, bloody hell! Was it a secondary movement after a ruck was formed and then he went long with his body? What is it? But then, if you've played the game for a long time, going long, it means he's affecting the jackal, can't support his own body weight. He's talking to the players in their language. He needs to be talking to the crowd.
It's like you with your financial advisor friends. You'll stand around going, "Yeah, I'm an IFA. Let's talk about Johnny's SIP." And anyone who was just eavesdropping on that conversation wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, Beardmore & Co. Independent Financial Advisors, in case anyone's interested. But yeah, that's exactly it. You've got to speak to your audience. You can't be speaking like to an industry insider.
Yeah, that's an interesting point with the World Cup right there, and particularly with people of different nationalities. What I will say, just while we're on the refereeing point and with the World Cup in mind, is Nick Berry was loose as you like at the breakdown.
Well, that is their job to work it out, I'm afraid.
No, 100%. I guess my only point here is that the variation between referees, and particularly between North and Southern Hemisphere referees, can vary wildly, and the team which manages that the best is going to go a long way in a World Cup, because I do think referees, and World Rugby at World Cups, they always tone back on some of the decision-making things, like some of the things which you would have gone a couple of months ago would be a red card. Suddenly at a World Cup, they're giving yellows. Yeah. But I do think at this World Cup, more than any other, the referees are going to have a massive impact on games, and managing that is going to be huge. And in this game, I thought the number of times Jamie Ritchie was getting neck rolled, and I was like, what? He's just letting that go.
That's because his neck is so long. What else do you hate on Jamie Ritchie?
You make a good point.
Yeah. So on Jamie Ritchie, some of his turnovers, I think, do you know, maybe this is going too far, right? But I remember when George Smith first won a turnover. Not first won a turnover, but like it first became noticeable because he did 25 of them in one game for the Brumbies, and no one could do anything about it. Something which Jamie Ritchie did, and I think he did it twice, is he rips the ball so quick. He's not trying to win the penalty like a lot of players do. So a lot of players jackal that ball and they try and win the penalty. I know you're meant to make an attempt to rip it, but it's very token usually. They're there to win the penalty. He is so quick to the floor to rip that ball. It is remarkable to see.
Yeah, and that, like you say, Tim, Nick Berry was pretty fast and loose, and so it made it an exciting game. It made it interesting to watch, and it was one hell of a game to watch.
Wasn't it just? France are outstanding. Well, no. France have outstanding players.
France were unplayable, incredible for 5 minutes, and that's all it took to ultimately win the game.
Well, this is it. Yeah. So, I mean, Scotland can be very proud of that. They are getting a lot out of that pack because it is not in. It's not. It shouldn't even be considered in the same continent as the French pack. Like, they are just miles away, miles and miles away, but they are competitive, which is frankly incredible. They're squeezing every ounce of talent out that Scotland team, and I think it is. I think what they're doing there is really promising for the World Cup. Really promising.
I tend to agree, with the caveat that they've got quite a hard group.
That first game against South Africa is just massive.
It's South Africa and Ireland.
I tell you what, though, as a warm-up, France is pretty good, though.
France is a great
particularly
warm-up
considering you're going to see South Africa.
Well, I think for both of those teams, France is a good warm-up.
Yeah.
France... I was negative on Wales. I think they're likely to get out of the group, but I'm less convinced. I was previously convinced they would get out of their group. Scotland, I was previously convinced that they will not get out of their group. I've softened on that. I think they could, on the right day, if things go their way, with a bit of magic, they could beat one of South Africa or Ireland.
Well, there's an old Joe Rogan quote, which is, how do you make a black belt into a brown belt in the UFC? By punching him in the nose. And the ability of Scotland to punch people in the nose is very impressive.
This is a fundamental difference between these two teams and England and Wales.
Finn Russell.
These two, both of these teams they've got the personnel, both creatively and athletically, or the combination of them together, that they can score a try from anywhere. Like those two French tries straight after half time.
That Olivon try,
good
my
Lord.
goodness me.
That was special, wasn't it?
But equally, the two Kyle Steyn tries, the Hugh Jones slicing through the French defence, which led to, I can't remember if that was the Douan or the second Kyle Steyn, not Franz Steyn, the second Kyle Steyn try. But Scotland can do it as well. Scotland can cut people open. And there is perhaps an argument to say, well, England and Wales' defence was so good they nullified each other's attack.
No.
But I just don't believe that. I don't believe that, because France and Scotland have good defences, and they just cut each other open.
Wales and England's attack nullified Wales and England's attack.
Yes. That's more of what I think.
Yeah. And there was one moment in the game, and this was in stark contrast. I think it was in the first half, and France defence came up and absolutely mullered one of Scotland's players. I can't remember who, and the ball and the Scottish player, as he was getting munched, just flung the ball backwards, and on his own 10-metre line, Blair Kinghorn picked up the ball and had most of his teammates. Blair Kinghorn.
Thank you.
had most of his teammates in front of him, had just picked up a spilled ball with the French defence lining him up. And 10 times out of 10, had that happened in the game earlier, boot would have gone to ball. Blair Kinghorn just wanged the ball left to Chris Harris, who then jinked and made a break.
Harris? Hugh Jones.
Sorry, Hugh Jones. Yeah. Beg your pardon. That's it. Don't even need Chris Harris. Hugh Jones jinked and made a break. And it was just, I was like that. Having just watched England Wales, like that would never, ever have happened. And the same goes with that Olivon try. It was a kick that was just a little bit too deep. But so the first instinct of Dupont was, right, we're going to have you. And Ramos, my God, that guy's got wheels.
He's incredible. I mean, but so many of them are just so special. So they turn it on for they're special in just tiny fractions of a second. Like the way that Pinot ghosts past the Scotland defence. I know he only has to work in like 5 metres of space. It's a 2-on-2, but he's just so awesome. He's just.
But I guess the bigger point, just to bring it all together, is that's just mindset. Like you could play. I think you could if you took that same Scotland 15 or the French 15 and tried to get them to play to the T Steve Borthwick's plan. I think they would probably, in some cases, they would do it better. They might have better overall individual players.
I don't think they'd listen.
They would do it more
Finn Russell's
effectively.
gonna listen?
But equally, I think if you took the same players and just played with the same mindset, that you would see so much more from England and Wales.
Yeah,
so particularly England.
I'm going to have to. I think Scotland in particular, it is. They have been in a long-standing feud. Finn Russell and Gregor Townsend. It's kind of like having a manager you can't sack, coaching, Ronaldo in his prime. Like, you can't get rid of the best player and you can't get rid of the best manager. You two are going to have to sort of compromise and get on with it now. Certainly there have been times, I'm certain, that Gregor Townsend has wanted to move on from Finn Russell so he can play the game that he thinks is most appropriate. And Finn Russell just plays the game that he thinks is most appropriate. And I think the epitome of this was the 34-all draw. Was it 34?
37 all.
Oh, what a game that was.
But everything you hear from people close to the Scotland camp, including Stuart Hogg in the rugby paper today, was basically saying that Gregor Townsend is the one who is compromised on that, and is just
definitely.
Actually, do you know what? It's your team.
Yeah, well, it's his team. If Gregor's basically said this, if I can keep my job, you can have the team. Keep me employed, and then you can carry on with whatever you want, Finn. Because he has to. It's about being an adult. Like you have to understand that Finn Russell understands the game better than you do. He just does. And then that's the end of it.
Finn has allowed Gregor to do some work on the scrums and work on the line-outs to give him slightly better ball.
Yeah, I can imagine the situation where Gregor Townsend's telling Hugh Jones to stand like a bit deeper or something, and Finn will say, "Excuse me, Gregor, what now?" Just shoo him off. No, there's no two ways about it. That is Finn Russell's team.
I've been so impressed. Like, obviously, the French team, we talk about them all the time, and it goes without saying how many game changers they have. I've been really impressed with how many of this Scotland team are just difficult and disruptive to play against.
Yeah,
like Blair Kinghorn, Kyle Steyn, Hugh Jones, Doohan, Finn, and Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey was an absolute nightmare to play against in this game. He had a really, really good game against a massive pack, and he was the main carrier for that Scotland pack. He made a lot of heavy yards and just kept doing it. He was excellent.
Yeah, you're right about that. They are niggly. Like they do play to their strengths. Like Jamie Ritchie is. If you're going to pick a world back row right now, he's not in it, but he does do some really cool things consistently. And a lot of them do that. They sort of play to their strengths, and there is something to be said for it.
Yeah. So I think we'd all agree
just on that back row. Sorry, it's worth pointing out that Hamish Watson is probably not going to start the South Africa game as it stands, which we would never have believed a couple of years ago. But that says partly the decline of the Mish, but also the development of players like Jack Dempsey, as you point out, Phil.
When you get addicted to players like England and Farrell, for instance, right? But I'll give you a better example than this. Ireland were absolutely hooked on their golden generation, and it wasn't until they got rid of them all that they actually became really world class. Sounds harsh, but that's exactly what happened. I think a similar thing is happening to Scotland when they couldn't move on from Stuart Hogg. They just thought Stuart Hogg was brilliant, and if he was still playing for whatever reason he retired, he would still be selected as probably a senior player. Now he's out of the way. Kinghorn is doing brilliantly. So sometimes you just need to refresh that squad.
Yeah, Kinghorn looks really good.
Yeah, really good.
Excellent.
And you wouldn't
so good.
Anyone got anything to say about France? Because I've got a few thoughts before we move on.
Antoine Dupont, Thomas Ramos are good at rugby.
And Pinot.
Yeah.
And Pinot is very good at rugby. And I would also say, so there's three guys in the back line there that I think would possibly, Hugo Keenan at fullback, Bowden Barrett at fullback might have something to say about that, but those three would probably start.
I think it's amazing you mentioned those guys, not Gail Fickou, who I think is just an animal. And also,
he's great as well. There isn't a weak link.
I thought Fickou had a quiet game. But I love Fiku. I think he's amazing, and he can play 12, 13 and on the wing. And he's deceptively enormous as well. He's a lot bigger than people
think. Everything.
But he didn't. He had a quiet game, I thought.
Well, the other guy who I'm amazed you've not mentioned is Aldrit. I mean, Aldrit just is so important now.
Yeah, Aldrit and Olivon were awesome.
Absolutely awesome. It's so good.
One of the things that worries me about this French pack is Flamont and Woki the way forward? Because they seem to be sticking with, well, I say seem to be sticking with it. They've used this combination, and it just doesn't seem right to me for a French pack. I think they need to bring in one of the bigger boys. Now, I don't know if it's through injury or necessity, but when you get someone slightly bigger, like a Paul Wilhelmser, or whatever, however you say his name, it just allows the carrying to go through him a little bit more and everyone to be a little bit freer. I like Bedont. I love Bedont, actually. There was that. I'm not sure about the second row pairing, and also I worry that this French team switch off too much. Like, they're so brilliant in phases, and then they go to sleep, and then they wake up again, and then they go to sleep.
I think that's the second row point is right, but if Willemse is unfit, which I think he's been struggling a bit, he hardly played, or he might not have played in the Six Nations, then it is a bit of a problem, because he's the one who would have been in that tight headlock position, and without that, you've kind of got this like half loose, half tight in Flamont and Woki, who's a 6/second row. So maybe they do lose something there, and it's a classic stereotypical French thing to say about them switching off, but occasionally they do. Like when they're probably 7 points up and Hugh Jones ghosts around the outside of, I think it was Jonathan Donty, under 22. That shouldn't be happening there. They had numbers. There was no real reason for that to happen, but it did happen. And that's where other teams will look at it.
Yeah, totally. And in terms of gathering form and sorting out combinations, I agree with you on the second row. He's picking holes in what is everything's looking very good.
I mean, you do get a lot out of those two in the line-out, to be fair.
Oh, 100%.
Those two
100%.
and Oliver in the line-out is a joke.
That's handy.
What basically France have got they've got a similar situation to England, without being disrespectful to Japan and Samoa, who England should beat. They are definitely potential banana skins, but France really, it's all about the 8th of September, and then it's all about the 13th of October.
Who's their big game, Tim?
New Zealand.
Oh,
game
crikey.
1.
Oh, crikey.
So you've got New Zealand game 1, and then they've got Italy, really, is the only other real match they've got to worry about until the quarterfinals.
God, I'd love them to beat New Zealand.
So they're going to have New Zealand and then 3 other games, or is it 4 other games? Yeah, 3 other games to just get everything right. So if Paul Willemse isn't quite fit, he's got about 2 months.
Yeah, which is a long time.
Yeah. So there were some worrying injuries. I can't remember. Did Scotland have any knocks?
Untamak and
Cyril Bay.
And Cyril Bay. And
one.
I think Jonathan Donty went off, but I don't think any of them are serious, although Untamak's face, if you just looked at his face, you would have thought it's more serious than you think.
His beautiful face.
Cyril Bay didn't look great.
Cyril Bay was the one I was more worried about. Calves and props, difficult.
And for Scotland, it was Duan van der Merwe was the main one.
Duan, yeah. Because even though like Kyle Steyn and Darcy Graham are both playing great rugby, but Duan, he can do things that no one else can do right now. No one on the world stage can do right now.
And he's an unusual talent, isn't he? A unique talent.
He's so unique because he's so massive and so quick and just so hard to put down.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. Is this game covered? Would you say we've covered it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a joy, an absolute joy.
Well done to both teams. I think.
Tell you what, if they can put on a show like that in the opening, I mean, that's what the World Cup, that's what rugby needs. France New Zealand opening game, a real show under lights.
Again, it just underlines the point. We've said it many times. Lots of people have said it, but it is going to create massive drama. But it's totally unfair, the fact that the top 5 teams are all on the same side of the pool. But equally, for pure drama and stories, the top 5 teams all being on one side of the draw is amazing, because we've got how many brilliant matchups and so much at stake. And on the other side, you've got, as you've already pointed out, Phil, Fiji, Georgia licking their lips, Samoa, Japan licking their lips.
So, do England have Ireland next week?
Yes.
Yes.
No, well, hopefully they'll pull up their socks for that one.
Tired of ads crashing your comedy podcast party? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
England have still got 2 World Cup warm-up games.
That's ridiculous.
Ireland and Fiji. Well, is it, though? Because I think they need... Steve Borthwick needs to pick his team and then get them playing well. Even if it costs a couple of injuries, you've got to do it.
So this is why...
I'll just briefly continue my point and say why I think it is needed, and then you can counter it. Because, again, exactly like France, England is all about Argentina. And then, all being well, without being too disrespectful to Japan and Samoa, it should then be about October the 13th.
So the reason I say it's ridiculous is not the amount of games, but the way they've been handled. So what was the need for the first string England team to play Wales? And what was the need to announce your squad this week? If you've got 4 games, I understand if you've got 3 games. If you've got 4 games, why not do what Wales did, which is mix up your squad for 2 games and give guys a legitimate chance?
I believe it came from the players at the...
Who cares one jot what they think?
No. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I'm saying actually it was the England players that said they wanted the clarity earlier.
No, the answer is no. Work hard. You're not here to be comfortable. I mean, the whole point, isn't it? You go to a World Cup, you're not going to be comfortable. You're going to be surrounded by uncertainty, and people aren't going to give you what you want. I think it's ludicrous to listen to the players, especially these players. Entitled, Tim. They're an entitled, arrogant bunch.
Yeah, well, it would have been at the Steve Borthwick's within his power to say no, we're doing it like this. So yeah,
Steve. Oh, Steve. Oh well. Oh well. You know what I think.
I mentioned before the Wallabies squad being announced.
Yes,
and there's a few surprises. The headline surprises were no Coops, no Hoops, and Big Will as captain.
I've got some thought. I don't know if I can share these thoughts. They're too controversial. Shall I share these thoughts?
How? I'm wondering how even you, JB, who I know you're happy to call controversy. I'm wondering how you can make that controversial.
Okay,
what are you thinking?
You're not. Is Hooper fit?
So, from what I've read, he's been struggling with a calf injury. They're hoping to get him back for either the World Cup or the final warm-up game.
Yeah, so... I mean, I don't know if this has got anything to do with it, but this is why I wouldn't pick the guy. You're going to go into a World Cup and... Okay, you're going to go into a World Cup. It's a high-pressure situation. Now, not so long ago, didn't he duck out of travelling with the Wallabies for, I don't know, mental health reasons or some such thing?
There was something a year ago.
He didn't go to Argentina or somewhere.
Yeah, there was a... It was a while ago. Where
you should do your research and come with facts for this if you're going to pose a theory, rather than getting Phil to do your Google legwork.
No, I just know he didn't. I don't know where he didn't go, but he didn't go. He just...
Let's assume that was the case.
No, and he didn't go for those exact reasons. It was about pressure and being away. He wasn't injured. He was fit. He just said, no, I don't fancy it. Now, I'm all for you doing that, okay? I'm all for you doing that. But I think so many people are led down the path now by this therapeutic culture which says express your feelings, be kind to yourself, do what feels right for your mental health. And at some point, someone's going to say, well, okay, that's very nice that you did that, but we are going away and it is going to be high pressure. And if you couldn't handle that, why can you handle this? And I think that's completely legitimate. Now, I don't know if that's why Eddie Jones didn't pick him, but that's certainly why I wouldn't pick him.
In October 22.
That's the one, yeah.
Actually, no, it's even before then. August 22.
That's the one.
He didn't train or travel with the team as his mindset was not in the right place to lead the team against Argentina.
Yeah.
So he flew out. He was in Mendoza, but he left Mendoza. Now, I think there's not much, and I don't remember much at the time. I remember it kind of happening, but I don't remember much at the time. There's not much from what I've just done a very quick Google search on about the reasons behind that. It could be family, it could be health, it could be anything. So I'd just be cautious to say, attribute anything to that. And it's certainly not, from what I've read now, that's not been one of the reasons. The main things are he's not been fit.
Yeah. Well, whichever. I wouldn't be taking him.
all I'll say on the Australia squad is Rassie Erasmus and Eddie Jones, they know what they're doing in international rugby, and they obviously have glimpsed the future, and the future is no fly halves. We're busy arguing over which fly half in England. No fly halves is the answer.
It's the way forward, yeah. It's the way forward. Well, I'm glad they got rid of... am I glad? Well, I just think it's weird. The guy keeps on coming back in different incarnations, and like the way I said that England are hooked on Farrell, they are kind of hooked on Quade Cooper. I mean, I've loved the guy for the longest time. I think he's an incredible talent. He's one of the most talented rugby players ever to play the game, actually. So I can see why it's easy to think, oh yeah, we've got to carry on going back to him. But I think Eddie Jones has made the right decision.
All I'll say is Eddie Jones always does well at World Cups. Australia always do well at World Cups. And to sort of draw a theme through this entire podcast, that I think the Australian squad looks like a team that are going to play with freedom and have the shackles taken off a little bit.
Yeah. Can we just dwell a second on the career of Will Skelton? I think there should be a real lesson to anyone playing rugby with talent, which is talent can get you so far, can't it? And this is what happened to Will Skelton. Will Skelton had got so far in his career. He wasn't playing for the Wallabies when he moved over to Saracens. And I think I can't remember how much weight he lost. Was it 20 kilograms? I got no idea. But just the rededication of Will Skelton to then leave Saracens, not at the height of his powers, but certainly as an absolute mighty force, go to La Rochelle, establish himself as so dominant that it might have partly been the reason that Australia have had to reconsider who can play and who can't, and now is captain of the Wallabies from a club in France, is a truly remarkable story. And I think anyone looking for inspiration of how you harness your talent and then add hard work to that should be looking to Will Skelton.
And it does help if you're 6'8" and 140 kg.
That's the big lesson.
But you know what?
Up to 140 kegs.
Imagine. I mean, I've got this wonderful list of players who are too talented to be any good. So like Pierre Spies, or there's just a whole list of these incredible players who never really reached their potential. If they worked as hard as Will Skelton, they could have been the best players the game has ever seen. But they didn't. Yeah. And Will Skelton did.
I do think that is a valid point. And I've just looked up his weight loss. So he went from over 150 kg down to 130 kg. So still enormous. But that was when he got to Saracens, basically, that converted him from exactly as you're saying, JB, this unbelievable talent, an enormous specimen, to perhaps the most important tight headlock in the world. Yeah. Not just one of the most important players in the world. He won back-to-back. He had a couple of years with Saracens. He won back-to-back premierships and a Champions Cup in 2 years with Saracens, and then has done back-to-back Champions Cups with La Rochelle.
Incredible.
It's an amazing story.
And doesn't it feel a little bit like Ian McGeechan in the 97 Lions when there were more fancied captains picking Martin Johnson because he would be someone that the South African captain would have to look up at.
Yes,
just picking the most physically imposing, intimidating. We might just squeeze that little 1%.
Yeah. Australia will be They might be quite good. God.
What have we got? Sorry, go on.
Tough. Yeah, I just it kind of reinforces. Like I'm not sure I see Wales beating Australia. It's then can Wales get one win out of Georgia and or Fiji? And full disclosure, I've actually got some money on Wales for the World Cup.
To win it?
Only because I thought 50-1, which was what they were rocking a few weeks ago, was too long for a team that I thought was highly likely to get not only out of their group, but have a good shot of getting to a semi-final. So I'd expect that to come into, if they make a semi-final, maybe like 8-1 or 10-1 or 12-1.
Do you think the bookies are seeing what you're seeing and it's now 60-1?
Well, I checked last week and it come in to 44-1 after last week. I've not actually checked after this week, but in my mind it's moved out. So if it's 49-1, I might just lay my bet and have it done with, so I just break even.
Yeah, I'd probably do that.
Looking ahead to this week's games, then, if you want to get up at 3 a.m. on Tuesday, there's Tonga v Canada, and then Friday night, Barbarians v Samoa, and then on Saturday, Wales play South Africa, 3:15 kickoff.
Okay,
that will be interesting. Looking forward to the teams for that one.
That will be interesting, and that's two teams in World Cup scenarios like the semi-final in 2019. They will play it very, very, very close. Kick everything. You'll be setting records for the most kicks in a game and the hardest defence, most tackles in a game. It'll be interesting to see how they approach this, because it's a prequel for the real thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
And go on.
Ireland play England in Dublin.
Can't wait. That will be really tasty. Because
I bet you. I'm gonna just finish my point on this pod by what I have been saying consistently is I don't think England are nearly as far off as other people do think. I don't think it's personnel. I think it is mindset, top 2 inches, and I think it can come together and it can click. And if they can start finishing some of these scores, all big ifs, then I think they could even go to Ireland and cause an upset.
You really feathered your nest here, Tim.
The word if is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, you really feathered your nest here, because if England do well, right, under George Ford, you can then say, I did call this. I called that England weren't so close, weren't so far off. But then if I'll be
delighted, but I won't be saying it's all down to George Ford.
Yeah, that is fair. You did say it doesn't matter who plays fly half. So yeah, okay, I'll let you have that.
Ireland, England. I mean, that's big test, big test. Italy, Romania will be interesting to see. I won't be watching that, obviously. France, Fiji, the late kickoff. France, Fiji. So that'll be a real good test of where Fiji are at.
Yeah, it'd be great.
That could be box office, that game.
Do you know whereabouts in France it is?
Let me have a look.
I thought St Etienne did a great job of hosting.
Say. Oh, yes, in Nantes, another one of the World Cup venues.
Very good. This is going to be a cracking World Cup. I think France is just a great venue for it. Some of these stadiums are superb.
I got my allocation through for tickets, and confirmation I will be in Marseille for those first 2 games, England v Argentina and Scotland, South Africa.
And you've got quite the itinerary of people to meet up for a drink as well. I mean, I'm struggling to keep up with your social calendar from our emails.
Yeah, I think the one which... I think my tactic to this, tell me if you think this is appropriate. I've been invited to a stag do in Toulon.
Okay,
nice.
Which I'm kind of thinking I might say, oh yeah, I'm going to be in the area doing some work, so I'll pop in for an hour, and then I've got the ability to extricate myself if I feel I need to, or just go all in if I fancy that as well.
What week are we going, Phil?
Probably the week of the weekend of about the 24th, something like that.
And where are we going?
Lyon,
I think.
Oh, we got a long time listener. The latest email on with offers is someone who's a listener of the pod who's been living in Lyon for a year.
Coffins,
fantastic.
Who knows the town and where to go, so they'll know where to drink at altitude. Might even be able to get you a game for a French team, JB.
As long as it's above Fédéral 2, yeah, I'm in.
So yeah, keep your emails coming. Contact eggchasers@gmail.com. I didn't get through nearly as many of them as I should. I'll do that next time.
Yeah, and also we've got some great mission statements from the RFU, and I've got stuff to give away. So,
well, the next week, I think we will have more time for that, because hopefully it will be much more positive, much less disagreement, and we'll be able to get stuck into all of that.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the grassroots game very, very quickly and the new tackle height laws?
Yeah. Let's touch on it.
Like, should we do 5 minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go on.
max 5 minutes.
Max 5 minutes. Okay, so
I'm timing.
Go. So I did play on the weekend, despite retiring. But the reason I played is I thought I can't possibly slag these law changes off, without at least trying it. That would just be unacceptable behaviour from my part. So I went and did the second half against Trafford Metrovics. By the way, Trafford Metrovics at the moment, their clubhouse is looking awesome. They beat us by 2 points, I think. And they're in their centenary year, and their centenary kit is sensational. Anyway, that's besides the point. So, because it was quite an open game, I've got to say I don't think it made a tremendous amount of difference. There were some penalties which, we weren't too sure if they were penalties or not. When the game started, it felt like actually the tackle completion went up. The biggest incident of the day was our scrum half, who's also our captain, getting kneed into the head. And I tell you what, if we had a physio, he would have been off, without a shadow of a doubt. There is going to be knees to heads, particularly for more tenacious tacklers. I think it's going to be very, very dangerous. That would be my takeaway. But in terms of how it is played, I did not notice an enormous amount of difference, I've got to say. Now, let me just couch out with, this is my opinion, based on that one game, which I thought was quite... it wasn't a great game to be part of, because everyone was breaking the line. It was very hard to... It did feel like you couldn't be dominant in defence, and I think one of the reasons everyone was breaking the line was because it causes uncertainty. I've heard nothing but negative feedback, though, from the higher leagues, so level 5 and above. We've got a mutual friend who's a ref who said it was absolutely horrendous to referee. But it's definitely not a game that I want to play. So it's not luring me back into the game. It's not as bad as I thought it would be, but I don't know if this game is enough of a sample size to make a decision on. But initially,
I've seen it's interesting that that's your position, and I've seen 2 bits of feedback from referees who refereed. One at quite a decent level, like you say, mutual friend ref level 5/6. One team from level 5 last year just dropped down to level 6, and another who were second in level 6 last year, so the top end of level 6. And he did say it was an awful game, like not enjoyable to referee.
Yeah,
lots of penalties, lots of stop starts. And then we had another who refed at Dings 2s.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
So level 8 game, and he was very positive about it overall. Now, he said the advice he'd been given as the referee was basically the cut-off for everyone. If the tackler tackles the ball or below, on the ball or below, there is no issue. No issue at all. If it's above the ball, that's where question marks start getting raised. Obviously, if the ball is held around the hips and you tackle above the ball, not a problem. If the ball's held around the nipples and you tackle above the ball, you've got a problem. And I thought it's quite an obvious point, but it makes it quite... You've got this big white thing in the middle of your body that segregates what could be a questionable area to what is no question at all. And, of course, the pick and go immediately around rucks and mauls, there is no change to the laws because it's refereed kind of how it's always been refereed.
The one thing I would say is I was very, very preoccupied with scrummaging and lineouts. So defence was not really a big part of my game at all. In fact, I think
standard.
Yeah, completely. I would like to talk to more centres about their experience because, and back row, that's where it will really make a difference. One of our back row made a tremendous tackle. My other thought is that if it does reduce concussions by 1 concussion per season per 14 league teams, like the RFU claim it might, which is begs the question why it needs to be done in the first place. It doesn't make much of a difference to the game, which begs the question why it needs to be done in the first place. I would love to know about the severity, because our scrum half did get hit in the head very, very hard. And if so, I mean that's a sort of that is the sort of case where you want your players removed, and the sort of case where I would refuse to be removed. But I wonder if the severity of the individual incidents are going to start getting a lot worse now. Less, but more serious.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm glad you played and gave it a go, and hopefully
you've got to try it, haven't you?
Are you still classing yourself as retired, or
it didn't light the fire, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, like it was great to be back in the changing room after only 4 weeks. You're not answering
my question. I'm not trying to pin you down, or I'm not trying to shame you in any way. I'm just genuinely curious. Do you regard yourself as retired, or just an occasional player?
Yeah, I have left the door open. I see rugby now as something which I'm going to do on occasions. Yeah, occasionally. Now, I was hoping that I'd get in there and it would be awesome, and I want more of this, more of this, more of this. It didn't leave me with that, unfortunately.
But you're unretired, so you're available for the North Dorset Sevens 2024.
Oh, I'll play. Oh yeah,
yes.
I'll play the occasional game.
That's a brilliantly positive note to end on.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, that is a positive note. Let's leave it on, because North Dorset Sevens is back. Oh, and can I just give one more shout out?
Go on.
Friend of the show, Chris Bentley, right? And I'll give you more details on this, has decided to row from Barcelona to Ibiza in the course of 3 days.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'll give you more details on that as the story develops. Developing story.
That
is some serious commitment to getting on the piss, that.
Isn't it? I mean, I want to go to Ibiza as much as the next guy. I'm not rowing there. Awesome effort. Yeah, I want to hear more about that on the next pod. But thank you very much for listening. I guess let the boys play. Let the boys play.
Sweet.
Tired of ads crashing your comedy podcast party? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.